Have you ever been asked, who are you? And generally, what has been your response to this question? What aspects of your life do you use to describe who you are? In this lecture, we will discuss what makes you, you, the personal, social, and group identities we hold, as well as the themes of power and privilege. At its simplest, identity refers to a person's definition of themselves. Sociologists elaborate it as one's place in the social systems. Personal identity is a unique self definition of identity based on one's qualities, idiosyncrasies, values, interests, etc. Some examples of aspects of your personal identity include how many siblings you might have, what music you like, what hobbies you like to do, your favorite color, and your personal motto. These aspects of your identity refer to your unique qualities, values, or interests. Can you think of some more parts of your personal identity and quickly write them down? An important point to consider about your personal identity is that it's dynamic, flexible, and limitless. After all, the music you like changes from one year to the next, and you can have more than one aspect that you use to define your personal identity. For example, you can like music, enjoy art, be a third child, and believe in religion all at the same time. However, social identity refers to one's identity based on the social categories they identify with or are directly born into. These social categories are based on certain shared physical, mental, and or social qualities. This comprises one's sense of the self that is derived from the shared beliefs and feelings of the social categories. Individuals are categorized into social groups by virtue of their similarity to the other members of a social group. By this categorization, both the similarities of the group itself as well as its distinctness from other groups are amplified. Some examples of social identities are age, gender, race, caste, class, physical, psychological, or developmental ability, religion, etc. As you may have noted, different social groups exist within each of these categories, membership into which is either self-prescribed or socially prescribed. For example, you may identify as a practicing Christian, or such an identity may be prescribed to you based on the fact of your birth into a Christian family. A group or collective identity refers to the shared sense of belonging that a group or collective has with each other. For example, you may share a group identity with people who like the same music as you and are part of the same fan culture, or with people who are from the same country as you. The idea of group identity is also useful for social movements where sharing a particular worldview, socio-cultural experience, goals, or values align people and allows them to work together towards a particular cause. You may note that the concept of a group identity is very closely linked with social identities. So, what is the difference between them? Let's discuss this with an example. While we may all associate ourselves with a particular country as a social identity, we may not necessarily associate ourselves with a nationalist movement within that country. Individuals who do not associate themselves with such a movement or group, which may share stronger values and beliefs and an active relationship in group, which may not be the case for individuals outside this group. Now that we understood identities a little bit and how they overlap with each other, we may ask ourselves, are all identities made equal? And can people with all identities access justice equally? According to Iris Marion Young, injustice comprises two constraints, domination and oppression. When speaking of social justice, domination refers not to an individual person or tyrant, but rather to a systemic phenomena that prevent people from participating in determining their actions and making decisions that directly or indirectly affect them. She proposed that oppression refers to the institutional constraints on self-development, the ability to access better opportunities and develop oneself. The domination and refers to the institutional constraint on self-determination, the ability to make decisions for oneself and exercise one's agency. Oppression is systemic, that is, it stems from systems of unquestioned cultural norms, stereotypes, attitudes, institutional policies, and practices within a society, rather than the result of a few individuals' actions. Any prolonged unjust treatment due to the intentional or unintentional exercise of power by dominant social groups against oppressed groups on the individual, institutional, and socio-cultural levels can therefore be referred to as oppression. This occurs due to the possession of power and privilege. Power now refers to the ability to decide who will have access to resources, the capacity to direct or influence the behavior of others, oneself, and or the course of events. It is important to recognize that power affects more than personal relationships. It defines larger dynamics like social groups, professional organizations, governments, institutions, etc. Within each social identity category, some people have greater access to social power and privilege based on membership in their social group. This group is the dominant social group. This group is the group that holds a position of power, establishes values and norms that benefit the group, and can enjoy certain privileges. The group or groups whose access to social power is limited or denied is called the oppressed social group. Privilege refers to the often inherent and unearned access to resources, opportunities, and entitlement that result in advantages for certain social groups and disadvantages for other social groups. Privilege is characteristically invisible to people who have it. People in dominant groups often believe that they have earned the privileges that they enjoy, or that everyone could have access to these privileges if they only worked to earn them. In fact, privileges are unearned and they are granted to people in the dominant groups whether they want those privileges or not, regardless of their stated intent. Unlike targets of oppression, people in dominant groups are frequently unaware that they are members of a dominant group due to the privilege of being able to see themselves as persons rather than stereotypes. In India, dominant groups could include cisgendered men, heterosexual people, savarnas, and people from oppressor castes, able bodied folks, upper middle class and owning class people, and Hindi speaking populations. The feminist anti racism activist Peggy McIntosh defines it as follows: privilege exists when one group has something of value that is denied to others simply because of the groups they belong to, rather than because of anything they've done or failed to do. Access to privilege doesn't determine one's outcomes, but is definitely an asset that makes it more likely that whatever talent, ability, aspirations a person with privilege has will result in something positive for them. Determining who has privilege and who does not is complex because a myriad of socio-cultural, historical, and generational factors operate intersectionally to shape people's experiences. This affects their access to resources and opportunities across social and political realms, including at work, at home, and in interpersonal relations. Furthermore, an individual can pass as privileged either passively or actively, depending on whether a member of an oppressed social group is mistaken for a member of a dominant social group or deliberately presents themselves as a member of a dominant social group. For instance, a person with mental health issues citing physical sickness to explain away a recent absence. Other people may passively pass as a member of a dominant group because of an assumption about their identity being made. For example, if a bisexual cis woman was dating a cis man, the couple may be assumed to be heterosexual and thus treated differently. Do you think you have any privileges due to your identity? And now that we have understood some core ideas such as identity, power, privilege, and oppression, let us further complicate our understanding of how these realities intersect. In the next lecture, we will discuss the topic of intersectionality and connect it to our discussion on power and politics.